Black power, y'all. Black power, y'all. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. I'll wait till some of you guys come back in the room. Black power, y'all. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened with the last live stream, but if you can, Black Power DP, please share it in all your groups, on all your platforms, on all your social media pages. Just 1 minute I'm looking at y'all, the next minute my screen just goes away. So self-critical for that. So please come back in the room. Please share the video again and on your platforms, all your social media pages. Let me know if the setting is okay. If it's not, let me know, and I'll do my best to make it as presentable as I can. Please share. Hashtag share when you've shared it. Share it on all your platforms, and we'll just hop right back into this. So we were talking about the verdict and the community's response until after the verdict. And Huey says, the question has been asked, what do I think of the verdict and the jury? I think the verdict reflected the racism that exists here in America and that all black people are subjected to. Some specific things I would like to say about certain people on the jury. First, Brother Harper and other members of the jury who believed in my innocence owed an obligation to me and the black community to adhere to their convictions that I was not guilty. I am sure that they, the people on the jury who agreed with Brother Harper, a strong man and also a strong also jury foreman, were in the minority. I believe that Brother Harper was interested in doing the best thing for my welfare. I think that the verdict was a compromise verdict, a compromise between first-degree murder and acquittal of not guilty. So he recognizes that. He talks about the reasons for that in this passage, in this letter back to the community. And please put your hashtag read that back up. If you did it on the last live stream that just disappeared for some reason, go ahead and put it here. Excuse me. I do want to discuss that. If you had any read that back from the rest of chapter 26, please drop them in the comment section now so we can go ahead and discuss it. And just so you know, this is a fundraiser. The Black Hammer Book Club does serve as a fundraiser, so please donate to BH Book Club. That's the CashApp $BHBookclub. You can also donate on GoFundMe, which is www.gofundme.com/blackhammerorg. You can also donate directly on our website, which is www.blackhammer.org/donate. I think that's right. So please take heed to that. Make sure that you hook us up if you can. And drop your hashtag what's on your bookshelf. Also drop your hashtag read that back so we can discuss that. I want to encourage a discussion around this if at all possible. What did you guys think about that? What did you guys think about the verdict? I want to know what you thought. If you were living in this time and if you were watching this case, would you be surprised that he was not convicted of first-degree murder? Given the political climate at that time, what would your thoughts be around that? I mean, just let me know, because I really, I guess I keep comparing it to like the cases that we see today that involves pigs in some form or fashion. And anytime there's any type of conviction, I'm usually pretty surprised. Because I'm not really expecting any type of conviction when it comes to pigs, because I feel like they're carrying out their job. That's what they do. That's according to their code. That's what they do. So let me know what your thoughts are about this. Hold on, y'all. I'm gonna have to pull up the new live stream since I lost the old live stream, so I can keep up with your comments better. So give me just a second to do that. Okay, here we go. All right. So yeah, if you have any comments, put them in the comment section so we can discuss it. Black Power Muhammad, Black Power Chakande. The name of the book, Muhammad, is Revolutionary Suicide by Huey Newton. We've been reading it for several weeks now, and after today we'll have about 2 more weeks, so it's really good. And if you want the PDF, we can provide that for you so you can follow along. We'll make sure that gets put in the comment section. So if you do want to read along for the rest of the book, the PDF is available to you, and we'll make sure we put it in the comment section for you. So yeah, I thought that was pretty noble of Huey to recognize what happened with that brother that was on the jury. But this is also another reflection that I know a lot of people think having more black jurors or people who are, I hate this term, people of color who are on the jury is actually going to serve as a barrier to injustice that can be given, Black Power Karina, to the black community when they're being brought up on charges or crimes that they've committed, and that's not the case. And we saw a very, very good example of that. And just for the sake of using a highly publicized case, the Trayvon Martin case was a great example of that. And why having black people serve on juries is not something that's going to liberate us as a people. It's not something that's going to get us a better outcome for crimes. It's not. So, but yes, we are reading Revolutionary Suicide and just discussing the trial on page 262, 263, the outcome, Huey's response to it as it related to the brother that served on the jury. Page 263, he says, even though he, even though he, referring to Harper, was unknowingly operating against it, he felt that he was acting in the capacity of one who loves the community. Therefore, I'm asking the community that in the event that he teaches at Oakland City College next semester, that he be given all respect due to a black man because he did not know what he was compromising to, which is the case in a lot of situations. We think that when we join these institutions, you become a juror, you become a judge, you become an attorney, you become a police officer. Well, I can make a change if I have this mindset going in, and it's never going to be the case, because you are going to have to adopt the ideologies of everybody else who surrounds you. And you're really just fighting an uphill battle. Unless you're going in with some sort of strategic plan to dismantle the system, you likely will not be able to change that system. So I thought that was a pretty powerful letter. He ends it on page 264 with saying that he would like to wipe the community out. It's up to the Vanguard Party to protect the community and teach the community to protect itself, and therefore at this time we should admonish the community to use restraint and not open ourselves up for destruction. So that was something else I noticed about Huey is Huey very frequently would tell the community not to go out and basically do these violent acts, riot, and things like that, because he was concerned of what the outcome would be for the community, especially given the fact that they have passed these laws where they make it almost impossible for black people to be able to defend themselves in the first place, black and colonized people to be able to defend themselves. And so he asked them to stand down and to be smart about what they're doing. Although he does have pretty much mitigated faith in the Black Panther Party while he's incarcerated. So that was the rest of chapter 26 for the most part. I want to see, did you guys have any read that back for chapter 26? Anything that stood out to you that you wanted to discuss? All right, thank you for the feedback, DP. That it looks good. I just want to make sure. I was not anticipating that happening with the live stream, so just want to make sure the quality doesn't look poor. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there was anything else that stood out to me in that chapter before we move it forward. But yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure that we talked about the Del Ross. I felt like the biggest thing that stood out to me in that chapter was the blatant difference in the way they treated one witness for the prosecution versus the way they treated another witness that basically operated the exact same way for the defense. And again, that was the point of this trial. And this is the way that Huey wanted to bring out this trial, was not so that he could get off or so he can get out of this. He had prepared himself mentally for the fact that he may be in lockup for however many years, even after they issued the verdict. And we're about to go into chapter 27 where they talk about the penal that's titled the penal colony, and then they're talking about his sentencing. And so Huey was prepared to spend some time in prison. He was not anticipating that he was going to get out or get away from this. He already knew what was going to happen. But the point of this trial was because he knew it was such a high-profile trial or case that the community would be watching it from start to finish. And what would be the best way to get people mobilized is by seeing how... even this, I want to be careful about saying corrupt, because corrupt means that something started out good and became bad, but that's not, this situation this system has always been bad. So this rogue system is playing its cards in this fashion, and here it is. There is no evidence that I've done this. There is no evidence that I shot this pig. But here it is, they're finding ways, they're grasping at straws, they're paying people off, they're using people from the black community who really are at the mercy of this system to testify against me. And that was what he wanted to bring to the people. That's why he wanted, it's all about mobilizing. So that's what stood out to me, was just the difference in the way that those two witnesses were treated, how obvious it was. And then we're going to move into chapter 27. So before I do that, though, just a reminder, this is the book club does serve as a fundraiser. So we're always trying to raise funds for this so that we can make this better for y'all, and as a way that we bring it out to y'all and the way it's presented to y'all. That all takes resources to do that. So if you're able to donate to the book club, you should. And you can do that at BHBookclub, $BHBookclub. You can go to the CashApp and do that. You can also go to www.blackhammer.org /donate, and you can donate there. And you can also donate at GoFundMe, which is www.gofundme.com /blackhammer.org. So you can donate on any of those platforms. And yeah. So with all that being said, chapter 27 starts out with this quote that I think is worth reading. It says, "In my case, I worked hard from sunup until sundown, trying to make a living for my family, and it ended up to mean death for me." Excuse me. "You take big people as the president, governors judge their children will never have to suffer. The penitentiary all over the United States are full of people who was poor, tried to work, and I have something I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time because I know it's written by somebody in a certain way, and I'm trying to make sure that I bring it to y'all the right way. Let's see. That made them steal and rob. They were looking for money, while they were in prison for life that happens to the poor people. Okay. In my case, I worked hard from sunup to sundown, trying to make a living for my family, and it ended up to mean death for me. You take big people as the president and governors judge their children will never have to suffer. The penitentiary all over the United States are full of people who was poor, tried to work and have something that couldn't, that made them steal, and they do something that made them rob and steal. They were looking for money. While they were in prison for life. That's what happens to poor people. So basically, this person, and this comes from the dying statement of Odell Waller, a laborer, and it says this was written before he was executed in Virginia in 1940. And that's heavy, because he's basically saying this is the life of a poor person in the United States. A poor person basically can expect to be victim to this system, and all you're doing in the first place is trying to survive. So after Huey is convicted, he's sentenced and he's convicted, he actually goes back to the Alameda County Jail, so they can decide where he's going to be sentenced to. And I guess his sentence was that he was going to get anywhere from 2 to 15 years. And that was going to depend on good behavior and, what he's willing to do in order to get parole and be released early. It says there was a hearing that was requested in October, and bail was denied. So he goes into the Alameda County Jail pretty much right away. He's pretty much all from the jump. He's in isolation. They didn't sentence him there, but he's sent to Vacaville Medical Facility, which is where they basically test everybody that comes there that's going to be incarcerated. They're going to test them for they got to medically clear them, and then they're also going to run a series of psychological tests on them, and then also to see where they're going to put them, what would be a good fit. What type of concentration camp do you want to go to, essentially? Or what would be a good fit for a concentration camp based on what we've determined about you. On page 267, I thought it was interesting that he mentions here that giving a prisoner, just basically the way that they bring you in, they search your body, all orifices and cavities that you have are searched. It's just a really, as Huey said, a really demeaning exercise, a very dehumanizing exercise that happens every time he's moved from one prison to another. They go through this dehumanizing experience. And then, of course, they give you a prison number, which he says is another way of undermining your identity, and it's one more step in the dehumanization process. Of course, it has historical roots. The SS assigned numbers to prisoners in Nazi concentration camps during World War II. Thank you for sharing, Shireen. I appreciate it, sis. So that's that. He's actually in Vacaville for about 25 days. He is kept in isolation there. And it says that while he was in Vacaville, he refused to relate to the test that they tried to do on him, but he was they tried to test him several times, and he says on page 268, I refuse to relate to these tests because they are routinely used as weapons against black people in particular and minority groups and poor people generally. The tests are based on white middle class standards, and when we score low on them, the results are used to justify the prejudice that we are inferior and unintelligent. Since we are taught to believe that the tests are infallible, they have become a self-fulfilling prophecy that cuts off our initiative and to brainwash us. Salute. I want to the reason I think that that's important to remember is because lots of scholars out there today, psychiatrists, psychologists, anybody that's in the mental health field, a lot of these tests are underlined and endorsed by them too. And I think it's something very important here that I've not only read here, but I've also read with, if any of you have ever read Amos Wilson, and some others out there. These tests are meant to see how well somebody can fare in this system that was created by white people for white people, and how well you're able to navigate and make your life functional within that system. And I appreciate Huey's breakdown of that, the fact that these types of tests are not, one, they're not reflective of how intelligent somebody is. It is reflective of how well you're able to navigate in the white ruling class system that was created. And that is very different from how intelligent you actually are. And so he refused and he resisted these tests when there were certain questions he would not answer. He said he told the psychiatrist that they really wanted to know my IQ. They ought to examine my background and the work I had done in many areas, including creative disciplines like music. So he continues to do that, to resist those types of tests, and it's very understandable why he would do that. Also, he also points out the fact that if you notice, most of these prison systems are deemed as correctional facilities, rehabilitation facilities, and they're not. And they do that, of course, by, those type, we want to offer these types of tests to see if we can figure out what's really wrong with this person, why this person keeps committing crime, why this person keeps coming back into the system. Recidivism, which is basically how likely it is that somebody who's formerly been incarcerated will come back into the system. They look at that. And it says on page 269, he said, during the testing, the authorities puzzled over where to put me. There was much speculation in the prison about that, and through the grapevine, I heard that they had some trouble deciding. They wanted all above in an isolated prison, but because of this public attention my case had received, they also wanted one that would be viewed in a favorable light, a kind of show place for visitors. That way they could keep up the charade that penitentiaries are rehabilitation centers rather than concentration camps. And it's very important that we know that that's exactly what these are. They're concentration camps. The type of labor that they're asking you to do, and the fact that they're asking you to do it because, do it for pennies on the dollar. Actually, there are a lot, and he talks about that as well, where he talks about the jobs that they give you. A lot of times you don't get paid anything, but even when they do start paying you, you're making 3 cents an hour, 10 cents an hour. And if you don't believe that that's slavery, I don't know what you believe is slavery, because no one can survive on that. What are you gonna do if you're working 8 hours a day? You've made 80 cents in a day. What the fuck are you gonna do with that? Are you gonna send that back to your family so that they can feed themselves while you're there? And so it's just it is modern day slavery. And and the Constitution tells you that. They tell you that's what it is, because it says that the old, slavery, and I'm just saying this to relate it to the prison system, because we know there's a whole lot of contradictions around the Constitution, the United States Constitution. But the Constitution does say that informs because of essentially because of criminal conduct, that is how they can justify a means of slavery. So it is slavery. They do not refute that is what it is. And as a matter of fact, that's something that we read about in Assata Shakur's autobiography, when she mentions, when slavery was outlawed, and they said, well, no, not when it comes to having committed a crime. So Rachel White, meanwhile, they still can't support themselves while in prison. No, they can't. And I mean, and again, that's what I'm saying, that it is slavery. It's not a rehabilitation center. It's not meant to help you to acquire job skills. And we also know that most times, even if you come out with so-called job skills out of the prison system, how likely is it that you're going to walk right into a job when and if you ever get out? If you get out, you're going to be able to go with a felony on your record, or even misdemeanors. Certain misdemeanors carry heavy weight where it's hard to find a job. And so when you get out, so what is the likelihood that you're going to be able to go out and find a sustainable job after having this? So yeah, miss me with the whole, oh, well, it doesn't help. The administration at Vacaville even went through the motions of asking my preference, although they had not the slightest intention on allowing me to choose. So he actually does say that they ask him, well, where would you like to go? Which concentration camp do you actually want to go to? And he did have some that he wanted to go to as it related to how close he would be to his family, how easy it would be for them to come to see him, in that type of regard. But he ends up being put at the Men's Colony East facility in San Luis Obispo. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. So I think they said it's roughly, I was trying to find out exactly how far it was from his living place. Okay, it says the California Penal Colony stands approximately halfway between Oakland and Los Angeles, about 250 miles from each, and getting there involves a major trip from both cities. So it's pretty isolated. Any read that backs, please make sure to post them in the comment section, because again, I really want to see what you guys have to say about some of the things we read in chapter 27. Yeah, we've already gone through that. And something else that I want to go back to, on page 268, he said from the beginning of him being put there, what they want, Huey has a reputation for not breaking, and they knew that about him. And so, of course, with him facing possibly 15 years, it was their intention that if they come in here and basically entice him to say, if you do this and if you cooperate with us and if you have this good behavior, then we'll take you out and you can be in general population. You can communicate and talk to these people. Because right now, him being in isolation, he's only allowed out during meal times. He's only allowed out for, at the very most, an hour and a half at any given time, and then he spends the rest of the time in lockup because he's refusing to adhere to certain rules. So again, this is the concept of revolutionary suicide, because the minute that you start to become content with your prison circumstances, you might just say, well, it's really not that bad. I can deal with this. I guess I can settle for my people coming in here, because at least they can get a nice prison or a clean prison, or they can get one where the guards are not too mean or whatever. And he stays on the mindset that, no, we want to do away with all of the entire system. And in order for me to continue to stay focused on the liberation that my people deserve, I don't want to become content with any of the conditions, any of these rotten conditions that are infringed on my people. So I thought that was important, because I made a note of that here. We talked about the IQ test. Now, page 271. And I really wish my comrade Dia was here, because he had mentioned to me last week, that it was something that we really wanted to delve into with Huey's words around what he calls homosexuals in the prison. And I really, really, really hope that some of you have some thoughts around that. So if anybody has any thoughts, please put it in the comment section, because I really want to discuss this, because it's something interesting that I had actually posted on my own social media page earlier this week. That seems like it got a lot of reads. But on page 271, Huey says the penal colony is divided into 4 contained quadrants, each with approximately 600 inmates. Its layout and organization make it almost impossible for an inmate in one section to meet 3/4 of the population in other quadrants. In addition, very important, 80% of the prisoners were homosexual, and homosexuals are docile and subservient, and they tend to obey prison regulations. I know a certain somebody that I just cannot see, who is very much a homosexual, that I just could not see being docile and subservient. But okay. He also said that I did not know one person at the penal colony when I arrived. Eventually, I met other prisoners and tried to reach them, but I found it hard to politicize men who lived largely for the next sexual encounter. To them, sex was all. These men were exploited and controlled by the guards in the system. Their sexuality was perverted into a pseudo-sexuality that was used to control and undermine their normal yearnings for dignity and freedom. He says something else here in the third and the fourth paragraph down. He says homosexual love at the penal colony was routinely simple. Each inmate, except for me, had a key to let himself in and out of his cell during the day. A date would be made at mealtime or in the shower as the point of, and a point man stationed outside the hall. So basically, he goes into that, but then he also says that what the guards did was they made it kind of a form of weapon against these people. So, if you didn't want to be separated from your mate, then you really had to do what they told you to do, because if you misbehaved or fell out of line with them, then the guards, they wouldn't say anything about all this stuff going on, but they would just, okay, well, I'm going to take you out of this place, I'm going to put you over here because I know you and such or, whatever. So they kind of just use it as a weapon against them. And at the bottom, Huey says the reign of homosexual life in the prison has changed some of what with the introduction of conjugal visits. Liberals see this as a step forward, but it's not. The same coercion and control are there. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second. So I know that a lot of people who come into revolutionary life, that's the attitude that is, I guess, common. I remember the penal colony chapter. Cameron, tell me what you thought about it, because especially with Huey's regard, and especially with that article that I had posted earlier within the week. This is something that, really keeps resurfacing when we're discussing revolution, is that, there's a gay agenda. It's a threat to the black family. And a lot of people, if they read this book, they would use Huey's words to defend what they're saying. And again, we read these books not because we're trying to say you should subscribe or endorse every single thing that a revolutionary may have said. We discuss these things because sometimes we're going to find things that we know is detrimental to the community, and we need to dissect and analyze so we can understand what was the use of that. Especially since we know that Huey, Huey did have a very public speech where he discusses the gay community. Excuse me. And to make it clear, the LGBT community, that institution is not an institution that I would work with. That's not an institution that, as a revolutionary, I would subscribe to, based on the fact that I know that it exploits the people, the black and colonized people that would identify with that community, in order to further its agenda to make itself equal within the white realm. But Huey, I think it was August the 15th, 1970. It was sometime after the Stonewall riots. He made a speech about his thoughts about that, and some of the things that I pulled out of that speech that were worth contemplating, especially given that what I'm reading in chapter 27 right now, was that he felt that we should erase certain derogatory terms from our vocabulary, and that there does not have to be a separation this is what I'm pulling from that speech, because there were some things that I didn't even necessarily agree with in that speech. In that he said that the homosexual community could be the most oppressed. And I don't necessarily think that, because you have to understand that Black queer people are Black whether they want to see themselves as Black or not, or align themselves with the LGBT community first or not. You are Black. You will never be able to hide that. And your situation is compounded by you being Black. Sorry, I'm having to readjust. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do agree that he had said a lot of things in that speech where he basically, I mean, he mentions women, he mentions the women's liberation movement, which, I know that, some would call that the feminist movement. Let me see. I want to see Cameron's full comment. I say, first, when I read it, I could understand why people thought there was an agenda, but if I knew it was wrong to discriminate. All right, Cameron, I can't see your whole comment because I'm afraid let me see. Okay. Well, I will go back and read it. But for some reason, I'm not able to pull it up here. But anyway, and I know me and Cam, we talk sometimes. So I want to read the rest of your comment, though, because I think it's important. But as far as Huey's speech, I mean, his attitudes, I think, changed as far as, where the LGBT or where gay people stood within the movement. And he saw that we could work with those movements and kind of further the revolutionary agenda. He also thought that about the women's liberation movement. And we know that those movements now, today, in 2019, have proven historically not to have the Black and colonized people that I guess supposedly belong to those communities. They don't have their best interests at heart. We know that the feminist movement, they've done what they've always done, which is always put Black women in the forefront as if we're inclusive, and then when it comes to making their agenda, or when it actually comes to giving Black women the platform, or saying that this is what we want. For example, if you want to say Black women make 63 cents to the white man's dollar, white women make 77 cents. We want it to where the 67 cents is what's closing the gap. We don't want to focus on the 77 cents. I mean, that's just an example. But Huey's layout of the homosexual community, in this particular book, and this is in 1969-1970. So this isn't too far before he has a discussion around, he has the speech about the gay community and about the women's liberation movement. So if you guys get a chance to read that article or read his speech around that, you should. And I would love to kind of continue that discussion around that, because he said some pretty profound things in that speech. And just basically based on what we're reading here, it's almost in a complete contradiction of that. But I think he also, in his speech, recognizes that he has biases that are unimportant or trivial. And he understands that I, may be inserting my own bias in this. But when I'm saying even a homosexual can be revolutionary, maybe what I should say is that they could be the most revolutionary. So when you get a chance to read that, you should. I think it's worth discussing. I think it'd be really good on having a continued discussion around it. But I thought that was something that we needed to focus on, given what we know about the Black Panther Party, given what we know about the chauvinism that was reported to go on there, and it was. And Huey does address that, but that is something that was very prevalent in there, and there was, I don't know that there were a lot of, at least out gay revolutionaries black gay revolutionaries that were in the Black Panther Party. But that would be something I would like to know more about. That would be something I'd like to explore. He also talks on page 270. I made a note about this, about euphemisms, and how he talked about using a nicer word, for what we call concentration camps. We kind of already talked about that, but I just made a note about it. And the fact that Huey believed in the power of words, I wanted to reemphasize what he had said there about changing a name of a prison, a concentration camp, and calling it a rehabilitation center doesn't mean that it's any less savage in the way that it treats the people, or what it was put there from the beginning to do. So yeah, y'all got any more? All right, Gigi says she agrees. I don't know why I can't see the comments, y'all. Let me see if I can pull them back up, because I really want to read the rest of Cameron's comment. Let's see. Yeah, if y'all want to, I really would like to hear what y'all have to say about it, though, because okay, here we go, Cam. Cam says, when I first read it, I could understand why people thought that there was an agenda, but I knew that it was wrong to discriminate against them. Hell, I thought there was an agenda, but I grew out of it. I appreciate that, Cam. Yeah, because that's something that a lot of people still believe, and it really perpetuates the violence that's done to the people even within the community. So even without comparing us to colonizers and white people and how they do and how they respond to it, we know that within our own community, we have some contradictions that have been created by colonialism that we have to undo, and we have to deprogram and realize that are not meant for the best interest of the people. So something else that I found that really stood out to me was he again talks about Ron Karenga and his involvement with the murder of Bobby Hutton, little Bobby Hutton, in 1969. And so yeah, this had to have been in 1969. So he gets a piece of tragic news at the bottom of page 274. It says, early in 1969, January, I had been in prison for 4 months. Two worthy Los Angeles comrades, John Higgins and apprentice Bunchy Carter, were assassinated on the UCLA campus by members of Ron Karenga's organization, U.S. I had first met Karenga when I was involved in the Afro-American Association at Oakland City College. He later went to Los Angeles to establish his own cultural nationalist group, which was for a while quite successful, largely because the Los Angeles Police Department supported him. That's a red flag. In many of his ventures. Mayor Yorty even used the group as a show of progressivism. U.S. was in fact an agency to keep the black community under control. Sources in Swahili and a kind of cultist philosophy were offered. Advertised as a program to free blacks, Karenga's U.S. in fact exploited them. Yeah, I saw okay, so Cameron says he thought that it was Eldridge who got Bobby murdered. And they are tying, well, according to Huey's account, this organization had something to do with Bobby's murder. And I think he goes into why that was. But Karenga, if we mentioned Karenga at the beginning of this book because there was a footnote at the bottom of one of the chapters we were reading, actually, where they first mentioned little Bobby Hutton. It was Karenga was mentioned in the footnote there because there were some ties to his to Karenga basically outing the location of where they were, And Karinga worked with the police, again, which is a big red flag, but he was competing for membership in his organization. There was a rally that took place on Huey's birthday, February the 17th, and, you know, there were lots of people there: Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, City Council Ron Dellums, and they all came together and they made put this rally together. And he co-opted the event. Ron Karinga co-opted the event, and he uses the LAPD to actually provide security. And the money that came in from that rally was supposed to be used or distributed out differently, and then they end up taking the money and doing what they want with it. And after that, I mean, it says less than a year later, these comrades from the Black Panther Party were murdered. And the meeting was actually at UCLA was supposed to be discussing the appointment of a new Black Studies program director. I mean, I don't know how much worse it can get for you to sell out your people like that, but I mean, and I'll tell you, when I first heard about Ron Karinga's role in doing that, I used to celebrate Kwanzaa, and you know, he's the founder of the Kwanzaa celebration. It's an African American holiday. And I was just disgusted. I was so disgusted. Like, I have a Kanara, and I have not brought it out. And like, now I think it's going to be the third year. And it's hard for me to celebrate something like that, even though the principles are great and they're African. They're in Swahili, the 7 principles and everything like that. But knowing that that's the founder of it, I can't do that. I can't celebrate that, because he really, how do you come up with a principles of unity for your people, and you're going to sell your people out like that? You're going to be responsible for their literal deaths, and you're working with the very entity that would destroy them to begin with. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm not trying to be long-winded, but let me get to the end, because it's after 12. But the assassinations of those comrades had very much to do. And Cameron, just so you know, at the bottom of page 276, the assassinations had started with the murder of little Bobby Hutton by the Oakland police. When the Chicago police killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, many people throughout the country began to suspect that there was a national police conspiracy to wipe us out, and each new attack on the brothers confirmed this suspicion. So So Ron Karinga, he is saying that Ron Karinga did have a direct hand in the assassination of Lil Bobby Hutton, and even like with Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. Ron Karinga is a total sellout. And he goes by some African name, which I think is laughable, because what's the point of you taking on an African name like that and you sell out your people like that? So, yeah. Huey goes on to say on page 277, though, that he knew that the community would deal with Karinga, and eventually it did. A community tribunal was held in Los Angeles, and it found him guilty of deceiving the people. He had to leave Los Angeles and move his operation to San Diego. So they did do that. He said that Huey said that somebody came to visit him in prison, because he was trying to get it to where Karinga just started helping the police with getting people murdered. And he said somebody came to see Huey in prison, somebody named Robert Hall, which Huey had no idea who this man was. He comes to the prison and asks if Huey can, I guess, diffuse the tension that was happening between Karinga's group and the Black Panthers. And Huey says he doesn't trust this man, never knew who he was, didn't understand how this man even got to he doesn't deserve an African name, Robert. You are absolutely right. But he said that he didn't even know how this man that came to the prison even got back to see Huey, because it was on a non-visitation day outside of visitation hours. So Huey already didn't trust the visitor from the start. But yeah, so that's what happened with that. So Karinga is definitely a sellout. Before we, and I mean, I really hate, because I feel like there was so many things that I really haven't gotten around to discussing. But if you have read that backs, please put it in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. And I don't think anybody's posted one yet today. So anything that stood out to you in chapter 27, please post it in the comment section so we can analyze it, chew down on it some. Page 278, he talks about, he ponders the similarity between prison experience and the slave experience of black people, which I thought was really heavy. Both systems involves exploitation. The slave received no compensation for the wealth he produced, and the prisoner expected to produce marketable goods for what amounts to no compensation. Slavery and prison life share a complete lack of freedom and movement. So again, it's just a new reformed type of slavery, and we make up a very huge percentage of that population. So I thought that was really heavy for him to put it in words where people can see that prison and slavery are really one and the same. Excuse me. Wow. And then on page 281, he even talks about jurors, and we kind of already had a discussion around this. It says jurors, it's in the second paragraph on page 281. Jurors in America are not peers. They are part of the system of oppression. As a result, the poor end up in penitentiaries as political prisoners. They have every reason to feel bitter, especially when it's plain to see how leniently these juries handled accused persons of their own class, if indeed they are ever brought to trial. What do y'all think about that? What do y'all think about jurors in the American justice system and having what they want to call representation? What do you think about that? Do you really does anybody think that there's some real liberation tied to having more people that look like you that are reading a book or a book of rules written and enforced by the oppressor and playing by those rules? Do you really feel like representation could really bring any type of reform or any type of change in cases where we're accused of what they deem as crimes? What do y'all think about that? They begin to assess a society and see that their crimes were in part a result as a capitalist and exploitive society. Frequently, they become socialists, recognizing that capitalism has given birth to the murderous twins, imperialism and racism. This enlightened and politically conscious prisoners arrive at convictions that the authorities find unacceptable and threatening. And this is him talking about people who go into the prison who actually truly are get the opportunity to read and get the opportunity to understand why they're in the position that they're in now. I thought that was pretty heavy. Crimes, by the definition, is whatever threatens their authority and the status quo. That is absolutely right, Robert. I mean, that could not be closer to the truth, because they define, basically, don't come after my shit that I stole from y'all, because if you do, it's deemed a crime. And if I even think you're thinking about it, I'm gonna see what I can do to eliminate you as a threat. I mean, there's a lot of jewels I highlighted in this chapter, because it was just so much that was that Huey outlined here. When they appear before parole boards, they are questioned about the past. This is on page 282, about their views of contemporary social issues. If they are honest and tell the truth, they are denied parole. So basically, this is somebody like Huey with the same mindset that Huey would. If you go to parole and if you don't say, yes, sir, master, sir, I know I was doing wrong and I'm not going to do wrong no more. And I'm just going to, I'm going to do right and I'm going to follow the rules. And if you do that, then they will, you'll get granted parole. He mentions political prisoners, George Jackson and Booker T. Washington, who are two well-known examples among thousands less visible. And I mean, the fact that they're denied parole is because they refuse to submit. They refuse to go along with what they want you to say, to internalize, so that they can, again, they dangling the carrot in front of you and saying, well, if you do this, we'll let you do this. So you're content with your prison. You're content with your oppression. It says another type of political prisoner is the one who has committed no crime at all, but who holds political attitudes and beliefs that threaten the privileged status of the ruling circle in the United States. Among them are many gallant warriors of the Black Panther Party who want justice for all men and an end to the oppression of the lumpen proletariat. They are given long sentences on flimsy charges. How many times have we read about that? Such injustices are clear, deliberate attempts to strangle the freedom struggles of peace-loving people. So it's just like, in order to be at peace, you can't you can't. It's just the way he framed that, where he says that last sentence, they are given long sentences on flimsy charges. And such injustices are clearly, deliberately attempts to strangle the freedom struggles of peace-loving people. So these people who truly want peace for the whole world, you're a threat to. You're a threat. You really have to be. You really have to be. You really can't be thinking about the injustice in the way that it is. You really just have to be like, well, this is the way that it is, so this is it. And unfortunately, the majority of a lot of colonized people think that way, that there's really nothing we can do to overturn this system that operates against us. Wow. So what else stood out to you guys in chapter 27? There were I could go on, and I know we're at it's 12:26 now, and I don't want to keep going out, because I'll go. I'll keep talking. But what did you guys think? I see on page 285, Huey makes mention of James Baldwin, and he said, and on page 285, what he says about James, he said, James Baldwin has pointed out the United States does not know what to do with its black population now, that they are no longer a source of wealth, and no longer to be bought and sold and bred like cattle. This country especially does not know what to do with its young black men. It's not all accidental, he says, that the jails and the army and the needle claim so many. I mean, it's so many things that Huey highlights here. And, he spends a great deal of time in prison at the Obispo prison. He eventually is, they do reverse the verdict. I want to kind of just make sure that I at least summarize what happens. But they reverse the verdict based on the fact, and that's what I was saying earlier when we were talking about the conviction. The difference between involuntary manslaughter and voluntary manslaughter was that involuntary manslaughter means that he did something in the regard that, and I want to kind of read it word for word because I don't want to mess it up. But the way I understood it was that basically they thought that Huey had been shot and shot back as a result of him being shot to make them stop shooting, and that would have been deemed as involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter was that in that he was provoked, and he responded according to that. He wasn't necessarily hurt, but he responded because he was provoked, and that was manslaughter. And the reason why the verdict was reversed was because that definition was not given to the jury, and so it was a technicality in the fact that it was reversed, so that he is going to be given another trial on that regard, and he was released. It was after lots of red tape had to be worked through, but he was released from the prison. And it wasn't, obviously was not something that they wanted to happen, but it did happen. So y'all, we have been in this book for, I'm sure, a good 2 months, and it's just so much. I'm going to end up having to read this again on my own, because there was just so much I know that I want to make sure that I marinate on. But this is a really heavy book. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, but we have another 2 weeks, y'all, in reading this. Next week, we're going to be reading chapters 28 through 30. And then after that, the week after that, we'll be doing the last 2 chapters in the epilogue, and then we will be finished with this book. I mean, this is a good one. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I will wrap up this session today by inviting you guys to join Black Hammer. Black Hammer, we're doing a lot of work right now. Right now we have 2 food drives that are underway. One's going to be in the Wilmington, Delaware area. So if you're able to donate for that, donate on CashApp at BH Food Drive. All one word. That's going to be taking place again in the Wilmington, Delaware area, on November the 17th. And we're going to be having a food drive in Atlanta, November the 30th. And we'll be doing that. So stay tuned so we can tell you guys exactly where to donate for that. But we will be raising funds for the food drive that we're having here in the Atlanta area at Central Park, November the 30th. So we're doing amazing work there, but that's just 2 examples of the things that we're bringing to the people or doing for the people, and we need people to help us to carry out the work. So if you haven't signed up to become a member of Black Hammer yet, you should. You can do that by going to www.blackhammer.org/sign-up, or just go to the website and then hit join, and you can become a member for as low as $5 a month. We have all these amazing committees that you can join. We have an awesome social media team. We have a great campaigns team that's headed up by my comrade Muhammadu Jain. You've seen he's doing a great job of leading this campaign around these 2 young, beautiful Black girls who are being exposed to somebody who has sexually abused them, and we want to help the family that's here to provide a safe living situation for them. So we're doing all types of amazing work, but we need you to help us to do that. So if you haven't joined, sign up. I'll be in touch with you personally, and I'll tell you all the different committees that we have and which one that you probably will fit best in. So what better way to use your talent and your labor to serve your people, rather than it going back into the machine of white power imperialism, where it's going to do nothing but continue to oppress and dominate and exploit and subjugate us as Black and colonized people. So I really enjoyed going through this book with you guys, though, and I really want to, these last few chapters, it's just, again, going to highlight what we need to do, because Huey was expecting that he would die his death would be more sooner than it would be later. He's talked about that throughout this book, throughout this entire book. So I find him as somebody who's very, very noble to look up to. Shireen, if you are, I need to, I don't know. Sometimes when people sign up, they sign up under different names. So if you have signed up, make sure you email us at blackhammerorg@gmail.com. Let me say that again, blackhammerorg@gmail.com. And make sure I know that, because I will be in contact with you, and I will be the one responding to that. And I can make sure that if you're not joined, I can tell you how to join. But if you have not gone to the Black Hammer website and hit join and put in your information, then yeah. So just go there and sign up, and I'll be in touch with you. It will actually be me that contacts you. So yeah, y'all, really enjoyed this chapter. I mean, I really did. But the next 3 chapters I think is going to be pretty amazing too. And then after that, I want to say we're either going to announce the next book. We're going to announce the next book next week or the week after. And we got to make sure we can get you guys the PDF so you guys can follow along with that book. But it's gonna be dope. And I've not read this book either, so I'm already excited about it. But yeah, y'all, lots of good things coming from Black Hammer. So if you have not signed up to become a member, sign up to become a member. www.blackhammer.org/sign-up, or just go to the Black Hammer website, www.blackhammer.org. Hit join, and I will follow up with you. But we have a dope organization. We're doing a lot of good things for the community, and we need the people to carry this out and to make this happen. And yeah, so I will see you guys next week. Hopefully my comrade will be back by my side, because yeah, I think that I really would have liked to have heard what he had to say about that. But we're gonna find a way to have a discussion around that whole topic. But yeah, so y'all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Do something nice, do something revolutionary, and let me know if you guys need the PDF, so you can follow along with the rest of the book, and we'll make sure that we get it for you. Share this if you haven't already, and yeah, Black Power.